Just want to welcome all of you guys to our 2021 SISFA industry panel. It's going to be a great panel. We have a lot to talk about, a lot to get to know you guys. So we'll just do some simple introductions here. We'll go around. So up first, let me just introduce the group here. We have Dustin Hodge, showrunner, producer, worked on so many different shows. I think he has a show in like 50 million households, and he'll cover that. I know he just came off of producing the latest season of that a couple months ago. Gregory Howell, storyteller, curator, creative economy consultant in the Grove and Water Tower Place. I believe he's in Water Tower Place right now, actually. Gregory is a huge in the arts and in the film world here in Pueblo. And then last but not least, David Schatanoff Jr. Wears many hats and a hat today with many producing hats, part of the Producers Guild and the Emmys and the Grammys and the Recording Academy. So we would love to, of course, hear about all of that. So first, I just want to thank you guys for joining us here today and for sharing your insights with us. And thank you all for tuning in to watch this presentation. So let's start. We'll start with Dustin. We'll start with you. Tell us, and then we'll just kind of go our way around. Tell us briefly a little bit about your background, and then how that brought you to like where you are today.
Okay. Yeah, I've been working probably in the industry maybe about 18 years or so. I started kind of as a camera operator, as a PA on stuff like Prison Break, and later running a camera for reality shows like Cheaters and Eye for an Eye. Then I moved more towards cinematography, worked on some indie features, and worked as a photojournalist across Western Europe. Worked in a news broadcast room, and the last 10 years I've been producing the show you mentioned, Little Britches Rodeo, which kind of examines issues in rural communities and those stories and tells them through the lens of youth rodeo. And so we air in about 50 million homes. We're syndicated in another 40. So that's a pretty interview heavy show. And also I've been, for 85 episodes, I've been producing a podcast that Cornell West hosts. So we've had a lot of really good guests on there about social commentary. And then I teach from time to time, and I'm actually took a visiting job, a visiting assistant professor job at Colorado State University Pueblo. And right now I'm in post for the television series. I'm just wrapping up the podcast series. I've got, I think 3 episodes left of that. And I started teaching last week. So it's a busy time for me right now.
Wow. That's exciting though. I mean, busy is good, but a little stressful. Nice. Okay, great. Okay. Gregory, what is your background?
So mine is a kind of an interesting one. I grew up in Southern California and also in Japan. And I literally lived on the movie sets for Oregon Trail, MASH, Little House on the Prairie. I can remember as a kid being on location on the set with the $6 Million Man. But my neighbors were, Bob Denver, Gilligan, Alice Cooper, Robert Young, Tom Selleck. I went to school with Heather Locklear. I mean, it was just one of those ordinary, neighborhoods when you live in Southern California. But while I was studying East Asian studies, both undergraduate and graduate, film was always kind of, I wanted it to be primary, but it had to be secondary for where I was in school because I was doing East Asian studies. But my father was actually in the insurance side of the film industry and living in Malibu. So we were kind of entrenched, more behind and living in the environment. But then I was really fortunate when I was in Japan. I was working for the Japanese Foreign Ministry, and I did get to meet and work with Kurosawa and also Juzo Itami. And he was, of course, famous for Tampopo. And I got to work with him and some of my actor friends on Ososhiki, which is the Japanese film, The Funeral. Sadly,
Wow.
both are gone. But it really gave me a completely different perspective coming from Hollywood and then being in a Japanese film environment. Very, very different. But when I came to Pueblo 10 years ago, I immediately just started looking around and thinking, I grew up on a back lot. I mean, Pueblo could easily be a back lot. So in 2018, I helped facilitate Harley Davidson bringing their 2019 models to Pueblo. And it was a very secret kind of stealth operation. If you've ever, I'm not I don't own a Harley, but I'm very aware of the Harley culture. And I have never seen such secrecy. I mean, with 2-story black screen blackouts when they would pull off the bikes because they covered them up. They didn't want drones to be shooting them. So what happened was they were only going to shoot it in Pueblo, maybe 20% of the shoot. But as they got to understand Pueblo and its backdrop, as a location, it ended up flipping to about 80%. So that went viral. I mean, it reached about 22 million people. We published 500,000 of those iconic Harley Davidson calendars. And it was then Governor Hickenlooper who called, and along with the Colorado Office of Film, Television, and Media, and said, you guys down in Pueblo are doing more for the state of Colorado, and you don't even have a film commission. So that's how we started the Film Commission, which just before COVID. So we got a lot of the nuts and bolts together, but, and the commission really does, and thanks to Dustin's been a big part of it also here. It's about film recruitment, of course, first and foremost, workforce development and training. And then we want to restore one of Pueblo's great historic theaters, because at the turn of the last century, in about 1900 to about 1910, Pueblo had more movie theaters per capita than pretty much any other city in the United States. Many of them are still around.
Wow.
Some are forgotten, abandoned, but I'll share some more information because we do have someone under contract for the historic Colorado Theater at 4th and Main, which is a 1,200 seat theater. So that's going to be really exciting. But my whole focus is on adaptive reuse of historic properties, economic development, and tourism. So, understanding film as an industry, and even more so, content creation. So we just finished writing a white paper, which we're presenting to PEDCO, which is the Pueblo Economic Development Corporation, to get them to identify content creation as an industry sector. And it's the fastest growing industry in the world. And so that's part of a whole series of activities that are going to be taking place. And I'm sure we'll have time to get into many of those and what we're doing at Water Tower Place and with the Film Commission. And now that we've got Dustin here at home, we're going to keep him even busier than just.
Great. Okay. That sounds like a lot, but a lot of very fun stuff. Okay, great. David, let's turn on over to you. What is your background?
Oh gosh. Well, my background, I guess, as far as film and television goes, I moved to Los Angeles in 1997, which puts me in the industry, 24 years, 20 something, I don't know, do the math, but it's too early for me. But I started off, I moved to Los Angeles because I wanted to pursue a career in composing for film and TV. So I came at it from a musical angle. And I started playing instruments when I was young. My parents had me playing piano and the drums very early. And then I think 4th grade was about age 9, 10, I started playing in the school ensembles and stuff like that. So music has always been kind of at the forefront of my brain. I went to school for orchestral percussion performance at Rutgers University. And then when I moved out here, thought, okay, I'll become a composer, start making connections, looked for a job as a composer's assistant, and then quickly found out that that was not going to pay the rent or food. One of the two, I could live somewhere and not eat well, or could eat well and not live somewhere. So I talked to a bunch of friends that were out here, and they suggested I move into post-production. So I looked into it and quickly found a job at a post facility as a scheduler, a boutique post house, Intersound, which is no longer around, but was a small boutique place in Hollywood that worked with all the big studios, Paramount, MGM, Sony,
Nice.
20th Century Fox, and the projects that they did, their bread and butter was like putting films onto, preparing them for like online, airline distribution. So when you went onto a plane back then, you watched a movie on the plane, they were cranking out dubs of all these films. But in addition to that, as the studio grew, they started doing more traditional post-production. So some sound design work and picture editorial stuff. So I was really hanging around with the editors on both audio and the picture side, starting to figure out, what was getting my brain interested. So definitely a post-heavy start to my career, and just from the knowledge and clients that I had picked up from that small boutique post place, I wound up transitioning to 20th Century Fox and working for their Fox Sports division and Fox Sports Net division as a post-production operations manager. And then from there, going to Sony Pictures and kind of building contacts at vendors along the way. And somewhere while I was at Sony, a colleague of mine mentioned if I was in the Producers Guild. I was like, I'm not a producer. Why would I be in the Producers Guild? So they explained to me, well, what you do in post supervision, post management, that falls under the duties of people in the Producers Guild, and they're the producers, the APs, post supervisors. Right. All that is in has oversight from the PGA. So I applied, got in, and then was like, I'm a producer, so I should probably produce something. So I started off with short films, did a couple independent films, and all the while still had this music bug kind of in my brain. So when I'm producing projects, I try and integrate myself into the music side of it as well, whether it's performing percussion on a score or writing a theme song or intro song to
awesome.
A piece. So still moving along, and I'm part of the Grammys organization, National Academy of Recording Arts and Sciences now, and the Television Academy. So my career is mostly independent producing. I'm still working in the music side, producing albums and audio media, but then still producing for film and television.
Wow. Okay, that's quite the smorgasbord there. But that's fun. Getting a little taste of everything, I think, is very wise in this business. Okay. Great. So that's the group. So now that we kind of know a little bit about you guys, let's delve in a little bit more on like what you specifically have been focusing your efforts on, and then we'll kind of get into more specific things from there. So Dustin, you just came off this show. You said you're in post on it right now. Tell us a little bit about that, what your role is on that, and how the shoot went, and then now in post, how you're finishing that process up.
Okay, yeah. So the season is 26 30-minute episodes, so 13 hours of television every season. And we coordinated and shot about 300 interviews in Oklahoma, right north of Oklahoma City, in about a 10-day period. Kylie Milanusik is my line producer and does just a fabulous job of coordinating those interviews and the camera ops. And we run multiple cameras for about 18-hour days. And I end up with about 35,000 video clips. And so that's, we start processing those, identifying those, labeling. Yeah. And so I'm overseeing all the posts. So that's sending the radio piece, that sports piece, to a color commentator who sends me back an audio file. I start breaking down the best interviews and where those should go in the season. And I have somebody lining up all the motion graphics. I write a script for the voiceover piece to kind of tie that together. That's that docuseries piece. record that audio, and then, really start putting it together, cutting it down, and then sending that to closed captioning, and then getting it to the network. And so really, I try to focus on, in the documentary work I've done, and also in the, just kind of all the nonfiction, is finding those voices of the stories that aren't being told, kind of those underrepresented areas. And so I love kind of rural areas, like first generation students, issues of class and education and healthcare. And so I'm able to kind of weave those into this. But this post will normally takes me to about April, somewhere around there, March.
So how long is the entire from pre-production to through the end of post? How long does that process usually take for a show like this?
Let's see. So pre-production. So we start filming in July. We start pre-production about a month and a half before. And then, we run through post about March. So it's, 8 months maybe of the year.
Yeah.
So I'll be gearing up for it again, early spring.
Right.
Just kind of start initial pulling together resources, finding people. Yeah. So it's, I've done 200 this will be 260 episodes or something like that, just for this show. Yeah.
It's impressive. Very impressive.
Thank you.
Awesome. Okay. Well, that is, I've always wanted to go to Oklahoma too. I'm just like, wow, I've heard stories. Of course, I'm good friends with Kylie, who's also actually hosting tonight's main event. And I've heard some stories from her about this show. And I know she just loves it. It's like her favorite thing that she works on.
Well, clear your schedule. Get your cowboy boots, and we're going July.
Come July. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Noted. So moving along, Gregory. There's a lot to tackle based off what you have brought up, but I want to hear from you more about this film commission that has been commissioned here in Pueblo, and how that kind of came about and where that's headed. Gregory, you may be muted.
I am. No, it really did develop organically, which I think, if anything, is going to be true to form. For it to be authentic and genuine. I mean, that's at the core of any great storytelling. But for Pueblo, my first nod was when I would do walking tours through Pueblo, and people would fly in and they would like, why is this building here? Why is that, all of these whys. And so just digging into the stories, but really, it's hard to, just create a location. I mean, we have back lots, we have movie sets, we have all of that, but, Pueblo really does have extraordinary legacy infrastructure, which of course was built by, the Guggenheims and the Rockefellers when Pueblo was, during its heyday, one of the epicenters for, just the Industrial Revolution. And then World War II just added more on top of it because of the military industrial complex here with steel and with all of that. Mm-hmm. So there's this amazing infrastructure. And what I'm finding, I mean, I lecture and teach about, adaptive reuse, especially with historic properties. And that's just something that Pueblo has. I mean, the current project with Water Tower Place is 250,000 square feet. So when you talk about a film commission, and really what is the role of a film commission, first and foremost, it really is about the recruitment of film to, your local community. I mean, you can look at study after study after study, and in Colorado, I believe for every dollar you invest in, it ranges, you're getting about $12 to $18 back. So it is a very powerful exponential component. I know Dustin and I have been actively involved with, of course, what is, commonly referred to as the incentive, the film incentive market, which Colorado has really been lagging behind, shall we say. I mean, we can't compare to the New Mexicos or the Georgias or these other states that have these, 50, 60, 70, 80 million dollar, film incentive budgets. But in any case, there's great capacity because you can't recreate the Rocky Mountains. You can't create what has oftentimes been, the real beauty of Colorado, and it's its natural landscapes. And then, of course, a lot of it's, Western towns, a lot of the industrial, the mining towns and things of that sort. It's really hard. I mean, Hollywood does a pretty amazing job in creating magic on location, but it's really hard to beat out, some majestic mountains. But so really, we decided at the outset to really look at one, if Pueblo is going to take this on for the region, how do we really take advantage of that? And so with the Colorado Office of Film, Television, and Media, and also with Real Scout, we have really dialed in on two specific things. One is the actual recruitment of professionals. So if you are a film professional, whether you are, in front of the camera, behind the camera, if you are a caterer, if you do hair and makeup, if you're a driver, there's so many different parts to that whole production. So what we're doing first and foremost is really working with Real Scouts. So not only do we identify who we have locally that has experience, that has skill sets, and then the other part of that with Real Scout, because they have two real platforms, is locations. So there's a database. And so again, this gets back to my first days on the street of Pueblo. I want this building in the database. I want this building in the database. So Water Tower Place was one of the first. And we literally, we've had ABC, NBC, CBS, we've had Oxygen Network, Discovery, we've had independent film companies, music videos. I've even had MFA art installations from major universities around the world, just at Water Tower Place alone. So it didn't take very long, but really the upside is not only, of course, bringing the crews, but then encouraging those crews, because if you are taking advantage of tax incentives, you do have to hire a certain percentage, 50% of your crew locally. So, and Dustin and I had lengthy discussions initially about this whole notion of workforce development. How do we create our own unique production unit, shall you say, that would not only allow for us to train and really bring those skill sets up, but also how could we then help facilitate film production? Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of different ways that we can look at that. And that's why I think over the last 2 or 3 years, a lot of the hard work has really been just identifying our assets, our resources, and then building the infrastructure. So one of the things that I'm doing in conjunction with the Film Commission is I'm now the chair of the Pueblo Community College, the Community Media Advisory Committee. And the only reason I took on this position was it became very clear that we do not have a really extensive mapping of the media ecosystem. So that could be film, television, media. And when you say media, are we talking print media? Are we talking, digital media? What are we talking about? Which is why we then expanded it to partner with PEDCO, because PEDCO is sitting on millions of dollars. And sadly, a lot of it is designated for export, shall you say. We're trying to really encourage a lot of that investment here locally, because content creation, especially now after COVID, or while we're still in COVID, you don't have to live in your town. Plus, you don't have to build the factory. We built these factories 100 years ago. So It's this notion of adaptive reuse. So for me with the commission, over the next few weeks, we'll be making some really big announcements, because we're still embargoed, but Pueblo will be one of the first cities in the world to be a center for episodic content creation. And I really can't say more about that, but it's a partnership.
Stay tuned.
Yes. No, I wish I could, but we're almost there. Okay. But it really is about, workforce development. It's about leadership. And so over the next few weeks, we'll be hosting some special events where we'll encourage people to come attend, one, learn about all the resources that we have available, not just here locally for individuals. I mean, we have so many small production companies and some larger ones here that are based in Pueblo and throughout Southern Colorado. So at the outset, it really is, you don't know what you don't know. So a lot of this is awareness. And we hope that with this other critical mass, the second floor of Water Tower Place will be dedicated storytelling makerspace.
Wow.
So it will have green screen, it has podcasting, it has a white site, it's got pre and post production facilities. This has all evolved as a result of ABC, NBCC, people coming to Pueblo and realizing, gosh, if you guys just had some more resources here, we would come down here more often and film, because your hotels are fun, your food is better, and it's less expensive. So we're just trying to pull all those resources. So there's a lot of great stuff happening. No,
that is it is so amazing to hear that these things are happening, because like when I was growing up in Pueblo, and there was like there was kids here and there like, oh yeah, like making movies and that, but like Pueblo has always been a very artsy place, but as far as like film went, it never felt like there was a big film presence. That's a smaller community, but to hear that it's growing in these exponential ways, I think is, of course, just so impressive. So that's...
Well, now we have 3 film festivals. We have SISFA.
That's true.
We have the 48-hour film festival, which is hosted by the library, and they're taking a very, and I love it, they're taking a very aggressive stance and really embracing it and making it, kind of a part of what is already very successful at the library, because we're so lucky. We've got the best library in the country.
Right.
Literally.
No, it's true. They have the
But
award.
the other is we have now the 72-hour film festival that Wake Up started this year. So the nuances are becoming very apparent now. So it isn't just about, hey, let's go out and make a film. It's like, let's go out and make a film and see where we can take that film.
Absolutely.
And the beautiful thing about what we're doing with the makerspace for storytelling is that we already have about 32 buyers that will be part of this process. So you don't have to go to, what are considered the traditional marketplaces for, actual finished product. So a lot of this is in the works. And I'm very excited that it couldn't be timed at a better time.
Yeah.
So
no, that is so great to hear. And again, excited to hear more when that comes out. David, let's turn on over to you now. And very curious to hear more about what being a member of the Recording Academy is, and how what that all entails for you.
Well, for me, when I applied, I was at a point where I've really been focusing on the television and film aspects of my career, and because there's always this music thing kind of flowing through me artistically, I figured there was, I've performed on enough albums and have released albums for my films, soundtracks for my films, and projects that, it's probably time to at least identify myself with the professional community in terms of recording. So I applied under their producers and engineers group. The Recording Academy is set up so you can join as a performing musician. There's, I think, an executives branch. There's the producers and engineers group. So whatever aspect you find yourself, within that community, they have a branch within the Grammys that kind of fits you. So I applied and got in just based on the sheer number of things I've released.
Right.
But it's a cool group of people. Like it's when I first moved to town, a friend of mine, his boss at then EMI Capitol Records, was the head of NARIS, or one of the top guys at NARIS, and was involved with putting on the Grammys broadcast and stuff like that. So it was an honor to be accepted into this community, just knowing the number of professionals that I've admired, and you start recognizing names of people in the local community in Los Angeles that have released these gigantic albums for huge artists, and it's kind of cool just to be shoulder to shoulder with your peers in that community.
Right.
Yeah, it's I can't say enough about the organization. They really help you kind of identify yourself as an artist and give you avenues to promote your work. They put on constant lectures from top tier artists, but also artists that are established, but maybe not as well known outside of the recording community, on how they released their last album or how they dealt with an issue. And part of that Grammy organization is also an organization called Music Cares. That's part of the whole Grammy community, and they help artists that are struggling, whether it's with mental health or financial issues or whatever their issues may be. They really kind of keep you on your feet as an artist, so you can continue to be creative and kind of find your path back to creativity. So overall, as an organization, awesome. It's a cool, it's just really an honor to be a part of that community.
Right.
And as far as the broadcast, it was cool to see Ben Winston, who's a producer on the film and television side. He produces, what does he produce? James Corden's show on television. He's one of his producers. He also recently directed the Friends reunion on HBO Max.
Okay.
But he either produced it and directed, or maybe just directed the last Grammys broadcast, which is now up for an Emmy. So it's kind of cool to know him from the Television Academy side, do something on the Recording Academy side, and now get to vote for him on the Emmy side again.
That is really cool.
There's a cool crossover with our communities, and it's just it's all artistic expression at the end of the day. So it's great to just be involved and have your creative juices kind of influenced by being in all these groups.
Right. No, that brings up an interesting point, I think. Based off what you were just saying, David, tell me a little bit about, the pandemic has affected people in so many different ways over the last year, and things are slowly getting better now. But do you think, based off of, everything came to a halt, like out here, everywhere, everything came to a halt. Like in Los Angeles, all the events and everything have kind of been postponed. Everything's different. Here we are virtually. Do you think, based off of there's going to be a lasting impact, like things will be handled differently moving forward, event wise and connection wise? I know a lot of people that just don't go into work anymore. Like they work on sets, they edit straight from their homes. Their studios are in their homes now. There's no need to go in. That's going to be like industry standard. Who knows?
Right.
So do you feel in what you do that there's going to be a huge difference working out in Los Angeles in the way that you conduct, business?
Yes. Yeah. It's you could see the change over the last year, and you could see people pushing back against going back to the way things were. And it's not just people, that are sitting behind a computer all day pushing paper and doing numbers. It's it's your managers, your directors, your executives, your writers. It's everybody is like, I don't want to deal in Los Angeles with a 90-minute commute across town to take a 15-minute meeting where I hear a no, and then have to commute 2 hours back to my place, and then waste, those 4 hours of my day in the car. Right. That I'd rather sit at home, spend that 15 minutes on a Zoom, and then, continue writing or continue doing this, or take care of myself, or take care of my house, or take care of my apartment, whatever, that is. We're able to get that time back now. And a lot of people are definitely pushing back. But for me, as a producer, on either side, the music side or visual side, those meetings all take place on Zoom now. There's not a reason for them to go back in person. I pitch much better in person when I'm pitching ideas. So it's taken me a little bit of getting used to pitching virtually. It's harder to read the dynamic of a room. It's harder to talk over people and kind of have that back and forth.
Absolutely.
So as you kind of adjust, or maybe the technology will catch up where we will be able to do that. doesn't seem impossible, but
Right.
there are the challenges of audio and microphones and
Yeah.
speakers that don't like each other when multiple things are happening. So
Yep.
that's it's a different form of pitching, but it's nobody wants to deal with that commute, and nobody wants to kind of
No.
have their day governed that way. Why
Right.
why go back to the old standard? So
Why?
and
Yeah.
and from a writing standpoint, one of the things that happened over the pandemic is I realized I should probably start writing more and become more of a writer producer than just a creative producer.
Mhm.
And as a writer, it's the same thing. You can write from anywhere. You don't need to
Right.
be in Los Angeles
Right.
and stay here and write and drop off your script at a potential management company or
Right.
agency.
Think of the past.
You can do that virtually. I mean, you could
Mhm.
always do that virtually. You could always write in the middle of wherever you are, no matter where you were.
Right.
Pick up a pen and paper, pick up your iPad, pick up your computer, and start typing, or the traditional typewriter.
Right. You just have to do it. That's what they
Yeah.
say. You just have to do it.
Just do it. So yeah, it's I see a lot of those things, and hearing from some of my more successful peers during this Emmy season about the way their shows were produced, either at the very beginning of the pandemic or in the pandemic. A lot of the producers were remote, so their show would be filming in Vancouver, where their team is quarantined for 2 weeks, and then they film in their production bubble. But the producers would not be on set, not interacting personally. They would get the dailies back. They would talk with the director that was on set, make sure everything's going okay, logistically do things from their home, Skype in or Zoom or FaceTime if something was urgent with the first AD or whoever was on set,
Right.
and handle everything remote. And it's
the future.
It's a new way of working, and it worked.
Right. Wow. Well, that's that is the way we're headed. We all must adapt accordingly, I think.
Yeah.
Well, Dustin, on that, I mean, this doesn't have to be pandemic related at all, but just I guess in general, as we're here trying to inspire. I mean, there's young filmmakers too. Pueblo itself has a lot of young kids that are interested in creating stories, and I think that there's a huge proponent to getting kids from a young age to want to tell stories and be creative. What would you say? So, I mean, again, it doesn't have to be pandemic related. Any challenges you faced, and then how did you overcome those challenges so you could keep pushing forward with your goals and your dreams to get your projects done? Have you had any serious blocks?
Yeah, well, I'll touch on pandemic first, and kind of tie to what David was saying. Well, first of all, I also whenever he mentioned the person who kind of pushed him to get in PGA, I had several conversations with David, who helped facilitate me joining the Producers Guild as well.
Nice.
So he's like, no, it's really good. So thank you for that. I'd just been putting it off. I was like, well, there's really no reason because I'm geographically here. But during the pandemic, it's been the PGA and the Television Academy both have been great at putting together events and connecting people virtually.
Yeah.
So I've met some great friends who work at HBO and Hulu and Netflix and that are going through similar things of how do you get productions. So last July 2020, I actually filmed my series in Oklahoma, and there were about 10,000 people on the grounds. And so, figuring out how we do that safely, and we social distance, and just the way that we set up to record interviews was distanced, and it was very it was challenging. And so the very first live sporting event, I believe, was at the end of April in 2020, and that was a PBR, so Professional Bull Riding Association, and they came into the same place I filmed in July, and so I was really focusing on how are they setting up, how are they distancing, how are they keeping people safe, and then so that was the first event, and then a couple months later we were in that same location. Wow. And so we were working with the Oklahoma Film Commission, the state of Oklahoma for public safety, and then the county and city public health departments. And So it's been hard because I had a couple projects early in 2020, like everyone, who kind of fell apart. Like the funding's there, we're in pre-production, this is going to be so awesome, and then it just goes away, right?
Right. Right.
And I know, like, I had several friends who work on really big projects, and I mean, that stuff got pushed back a year and a half, so where they weren't working for a year. So I know that was, super difficult.
Tough. That's tough.
Yeah. As far as like the stuff where you're, if you're a young filmmaker, one of the most important things is networking. It's meeting those people. Like Gregory and I mean, that's why we're pushing the Film Commission and all the wonderful things. And he does so much of that planning and contacting. And then I try to coordinate with anybody coming in. So the production coordination, where it's like, we want to film this, and here's what you need permits, here's some people. And we went and we met with the Senate president in Colorado and the chair of the Joint Budget Committee. We're like, we need more money, and they were very receptive.
Oh, that's great.
And so, yeah, I think it's part of that is finding those like-minded individuals and just forming a team, a bond, because they help you, right? Like, and you help them, and suddenly you've got a little team, and you're all pushing, and one person's success becomes everyone else's success, and you rise to that level of talent and friendly competition and pushing each other. So, I mean, if you're a student now, if you're a teenager, your early 20s, or if you're just getting started mid-career and you want to change, find those people around you that you can network and work together with.
I think that's just great words of advice. You need people in your corner. You need people to support you. You need like-minded creative people to just keep each other going. That is, I think, just awesome advice.
And you'll fill out those talent gaps, right? The skill gaps too. Or if you're a very good writer, but you need a good cinematographer or a music person or an editor. Because I think initially you're like, I need to know how to do everything really well. And then you never get there because there's so much, like the depth of those talent areas and skill levels. So, I mean, they also help balance everything out.
Yeah. So. No, that's it. That's completely true. Yeah, that is great advice. Gregory, any thoughts on that? How the pandemic has kind of affected your workflow, or not even pandemic, any challenges that you've had to overcome so that you can push forward with getting projects into completion?
Well, we were really fortunate. I mean, just using Water Tower Place. So, first and foremost, we have dedicated areas like the 4th floor, which is the kill floor, which is 22,000 square feet. That was originally designed for special event space. Well, of course, the pandemic, that just wasn't going to happen. So, but the beauty of having 250,000 square feet is we had production companies who came, like I remember the Oxygen Network coming for Cold Justice. And they brought 100 people in their crew because we have 250,000 square feet. They could social distance and still get everything done. So there were some really unique advantages to having so much space. But I would have to piggyback on what Dustin was saying too, just in terms of, advice, for young people, what we've learned. I have it on my business card. And my business card says, be yourself as everyone else is already taken. And, your whole theme, I mean, it aligns completely with your theme for this whole festival.
It does.
And so, but the reason is, you really just have to get out there and you have to just do it. I have more respect for people who go out there and crash and burn really hard, but pick themselves up and really have a better notion of not only themselves, but their own capacity, and more importantly, what they like and what they don't like. Right. Now, if someone does that 3 times in a row, then we need to have another conversation. But usually, those, film is such an interesting beast, and I'm coming from it from such an interesting kind of more behind the scenes in terms of building the infrastructure, strengthening the ecosystem, or at least identifying the ecosystem first and foremost, because I'm still amazed, at just the local talent. I mean, I produce what's known as The Dig, a contemporary speakeasy, every Wednesday in the back room at the Senate Bar. And we broadcast live with 3 cameras every Wednesday. And I mean, there's people all over the country that are watching it, which kind of blew me away at first. But you know, the talent is here. And for me, you know, after working, you know, with some of the team members just on the Rocky Mountain PBS documentary on the Great Pueblo Flood, which was an 8-month project locally, but really just pointed out, as with other projects, we have so many resources. And I really, you know, what you don't know, you don't know. And so a big part of what we're doing, and, you know, as Dustin was mentioning, when we kind of brought all of our resources together, you know, we're very fortunate in Pueblo, at least for the time being, because the 2 most powerful people in the legislature are from Pueblo, you know, Danae Escar and Leroy Garcia. So they were the ones that had all the triggers. And of course, you know, we were working really hard on the legislative side, which is really important, because ultimately, the more resources, the more funds that can be allocated towards these incentives, you know, that's going to make it even more attractive for film production companies to come to our area. But, you know, really, I would have to say we were really fortunate at Water Tower in particular, because of just the advantages that came with having all of that extra space. Plus, we were in an area where we really didn't have such severe outbreaks. And our health department was really very helpful in terms of helping us navigate, you know, a lot of the different issues. We still run into some issues, you know, with permits and things of that sort, depending upon where they want to film. But in general, that's kind of what we're working on the next phase, because Dustin and I have talked about this, and other people in film. You know, there's a lot of paperwork that is unnecessary. And what we're trying to do now is actually become the true one-stop portal, where you would literally, no matter where you fall in that whole trajectory of film production, because you could be a scout, you know, doing pre-production, you could be doing, I mean, you could be anywhere in that whole arc of ideation. We want to make sure that there is one shop where it comes in, because we can facilitate the permit process if there's an understanding between, say, the city, the county, and the police and the fire department and all that. So right now, we're just very fortunate because Pueblo's never had a commission before. So in fact, we have other commissions that have been around a while who now are looking at some of the things that we're doing. Most importantly, we're just so lucky that we've got, you know, community college. We've got a fantastic, you know, university, you know, with CSUP. And CSUP now has a actual staffed office at Water Tower Place. So it's not just, you know, in name only. There's actually a person there that can facilitate, because those touch points are so important, because especially coming out of COVID, it's kind of weird sometimes when you get face to face now. You know, it's uncomfortable. So at the end of the day, I think humanity does best, you know, when it's somewhat messy and we're all in that together, because that's where I think all the authentic and genuine storytelling really resonates. So yeah, it was a mixed bag, but you know, it's exciting, and it's only going to get better. So I'm really excited. Plus, as you said, with younger people, so we've partnered with D60 and D70, which are school districts, and in particular with PSAS Fulton Heights, which is a charter K-8 in Salt Creek, which is our closest school. And they're already doing film production. So they're going and doing research. They're doing, I mean, it's amazing. They're storyboarding. They're doing all of this stuff. So ultimately, you'll see that whole arc. And then it's like, well, maybe I don't have to leave Pueblo. At least it's an option. At least it's an option to stay.
That, I like that. At least it's an option, because at least you have some opportunities to get the creative juices flowing. That's no, that's great. That's great.
No, I would recommend that everyone leave. You got to go leave for a while. but it's nice to know that if your passion is in a certain industry, which is why I really want PEDCO to identify, because that would be a game changer for Pueblo, and they're very receptive. We've had several meetings, but I mean, that'll be a game changer, and that'll send some really interesting shockwaves through
Right.
the United States and other places where there's actually a community that is advocating, that resources be allocated to the fastest growing industry in the world, which
Right.
is content creation.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. You touched on a lot of interesting points there. I definitely, you beat me to the punch there with the festival theme. Anybody can jump in on this. So in this industry specifically, this film industry specifically, our theme this year is to be true to you and be true to yourself. How do you think artists and filmmakers can kind of use their own strengths to their advantage in this industry? Sometimes it can work against you, but is there some sense? Is there something that a person can do to hone in on their personal strengths to make it in the industry? Thoughts on that?
Wow.
It's heavy. It's heavy. I'll tell you what.
For me, it was.
Yeah,
sorry.
go ahead.
Yeah, for
No, go
me,
ahead, David. Yeah.
for me, it was a lot of trial and error. I would have probably just stuck with music if I were a true artiste. I would have lived on saltines and ramen for the rest of my life. But a bit of me was a bit more, that there's a part of me that was a bit more sensible and was responsible, and figured I should probably try and survive first and then be creative in my spare time. So a lot of it was trial and error. And, I tried composing for some smaller independent films and stuff like that. And the process was unfamiliar to me. It's definitely I'm more of a performing musician, and definitely a better producer than I would ever be a composer. So by trial and error, I was just kind of like, that's for other people that aspire to be composers, that aspire to write music for picture, that have that ability to see something, translate the emotion behind it into music and how it can support that and not overwhelm it. So I was like, you guys do that because that's what you want to do. You guys and gals do that, and I'll do this other thing that's music adjacent. So
no, yeah, that's great. I think there's something about that. You have to try it. Like you have to, and kind of like what Gregory's saying too, you have to maybe leave or experience this thing or try this thing, because if you don't, then you won't know. And I think doing those things helps bring you closer to who you are, especially like, again, as a young person, if young people are watching, trying things at a young age and like, oh, okay, maybe I don't, like I knew a lot of people, back in film school and that, who switched they went in thinking, oh yeah, I'm going to be the next big director. And then they took some like directing classes, and like we could like, oh no, like this ain't for me. This is not what I want to do at all. And I think that's just true. And you just you need to do those things in order to find what it is that you actually want to do. But yeah, no, it's an interesting, that is a very interesting concept for sure.
And I would add one thing too, and Dustin touched upon this, is just, I'm very sensitive to youth. I mean, everything that I do now has a youth component. If you look at the whole arc of creation, you can be 5 or 95, but if a 5-year-old has an idea, has a notion of what they want to do, they have pretty thin skin. Whereas a 95-year-old, hopefully they've got some pretty thick skin, so there isn't that real kind of fear, because you really do almost have to embrace fear. You almost have to embrace the unknown. And I think getting back to your theme and why I have it on my business card, because my business card, amplify the narrative, be yourself because everyone else is already taken. And when I teach that, you really can't even get to the authentic and genuine story until you first start with yourself as being a unique, creative force, if this is the direction you want to go. Right. But what we're trying to do with a lot of these different platforms, especially with youth, is to eliminate some of those barriers. So, a 5-year-old may have a really great idea, or a 10-year-old, but to create that kind of nurturing environment, or at least allowing for discovery versus shutting it down. because you start talking about film and creating stories, and you may have some parents that just that's not really going to get you very far in life. But to be honest with you, if you can really hone in on your authentic and genuine self and be a storyteller, my God, they're some of the best leaders on the planet. I would hire them first. But we're dealing with some really interesting cultural shifts now, especially because of the pandemic. Because just look at all the storytelling that youth are doing using the technology that they have. Now, some of it I can't stand, but a great portion of it is brilliant. So I think there needs to be some interesting, that's why I think this notion of boot camps, this notion of really bringing people together for a specific type of skill set is really one of the industry trends right now in terms of learning and building, your own skill sets, especially in a workplace development or workforce development environment. And Pueblo, if we're looking at a city, they have always been doing workforce development better than I think most cities do in the United States, primarily because Pueblo's been hit really, really hard. And when a single industry like steel goes down and you've got 25% unemployment, you got to figure out what to do, before everyone flees. So I just think there's some interesting things going in there. But for those that can really be authentic and genuine and be passionate about who they are, I think it's going to be, there'll be some hardship, but I think in the end, they're going to find a great deal of happiness, which is, of course, what we want for everyone.
Right. In the end, it will be worth it. So, okay, couple last questions. Yes, go ahead,
I wanted
Dustin.
to jump in real quick, right? I believe in both of the things they were saying. Creating opportunities, right? And kind of breaking down barriers. And I think the industry is headed that way slowly, right? Opening that up to be more inclusive. And but yeah, you kind of have to find what you're passionate about, but you need to know who you are. And that's a long process, right? So you need that, you need to find out what you hate, what you don't like to do. And sometimes the only way to find that is under pressure, right? Because you're like, I'm a great director. And then it's like, well, you have to direct this now. You have a very small budget, a very small time frame, and you're tired, you're worn down because you're doing other projects, you're working. Okay, now do you still like that? Are you still passionate about it, right? And sometimes you find that the things that you're passionate about or where your skill level live aren't where you thought they were because it was easy, right? Like until you had that pressure, and then suddenly it's like, wow, I really flourish when it comes to this. So, yeah.
No, there's definitely something in that. I think you need the experience. You need to know, you have to have experiences in order to know what is truly meant for you. It is so crucial, I think. Okay, guys, you guys have been in many facets of the industry now, in different areas, doing different things, learning a lot. What recent knowledge would you pass on? Because the more I talk to people and I learn new things. Of course, I'm learning new things every day, of course. But I feel like I talk to people all the time. They're like, oh, I've been doing this for 25 years, but I still learn new things every day. What is something that you guys feel that is just so integral in passing on? You wish maybe somebody had told you when you were younger that you think would help people? For anyone.
I would say the first thing is be kind. Take a deep breath. That's something, whether I work with youth or anywhere, de-escalation now, take a deep breath. I don't care if you're confronting something unknown, if you're confronting something that you're fearful of, if it's danger, whatever it is, if you can take a step back just for a moment, take a deep breath, because we've lost, I teach radical empathy, and it's not radical at all. It's just we've kind of lost our ways, and it's such a basic thing. But now that humanity has been distanced and we're coming back, and there's a lot of polarization in a lot of different ways, I think it's just taking a deep breath and sitting back and saying, what do I need? What do I want to get out of this? And what do we want to see as a successful outcome? If you're working on a project, You know, what are the goals, objectives? What's the budget? All of that. But at the end of the day, I think people just need to be a bit more patient, be kind. I mean, it's sometimes ridiculous and it's sometimes really passive aggressive. And there are a lot of things that kind of amplify that, you know, whether we're talking about social media or we're talking about the fact that we're not together. Because as David was saying, you know, about the interview process, you know, when you're not live, it's kind of hard to say, do they really like me? I mean, did I say something right or wrong? Or, you know, so body language, growing up in Japan, you know, what is not said is the most important. So I'm very sensitive when I listen to not only listen to what I'm listening to, but what I'm not hearing. Because that can be a really powerful, informing kind of, you know, device. So, but I would just say be kind and thoughtful. I mean, mindful. I mean,
no, I think that'll take you miles. Seriously. That's some great advice. You guys, any thoughts?
No, piggybacking off of that, it'll definitely get you to the next gig if you're just a kind person. You know, if you're enjoyable on set, no matter what position you're in, if people enjoy your company and you're doing your job well, you'll get asked to the next set, you know, and from there to the next one, and you'll keep gaining knowledge, and you'll gain a reputation as someone who's, you know, a good person to work with. So it goes a long way in my book to be on a set where, you know, everyone's respected and everyone's treated well and things are getting accomplished because there's no tension on the set where it's, you know, it's a negative tension. There might be some creative tension or something like that, but it's dealt with in a respectful manner. That's, you know, it goes a long way. But aside from that, for me, something that I convey I take a couple mentees each year, and one of the things that I convey to them is just keep going. You know, we talked about just getting out there and creating something. Just keep good. Don't be discouraged by the first thing you do and accomplish and it doesn't do well, or you see all the flaws. Just keep going. It's, you know, the reason I've been in this industry for 24 years is because I've just kept going. You know, it's something that you can watch so many people just fall off the wayside, especially on like the acting side or the directing side, is people go out and audition again and again and again. And it's discouraging to hear no so many times. And it's those yeses that pay off, you know, whether it's after the first month or after the first year or after the first 10 years, when you get that yes, that keeps you going. And, you know, between those times, it's just the ability to keep yourself creative and keep attempting to achieve your goals and your dreams. It's if you don't give up in a town like Los Angeles, you'll gain some success. So, you know, it's one of the difficult things about being in our industry is just trying to get to where you want to be. And a lot of that I tell my mentees is just being able to have that longevity. So,
wow, that's quite valuable. I think it's funny because, you know, a lot of people sometimes will ask for advice on that, but it really is the simple things that will get you the farthest. It really, truly is. So that's great. Dustin?
Sorry, I was just going to add that
David.
I'm not a stranger to getting into the minutia of producing with my mentees. You know, I'm very straightforward about and honest about the different aspects of what producing entails, and, you know, how to have difficult discussions with people when you're hiring in team members and department heads, or dealing with writers when in the development process. It's, you know, I'm very straightforward about that, but it is, I think, most important is just the little human aspects of being a person inside of an industry instead of being a you know, a producer or a director or an actor. It's gaining those life skills first that allow you to be around other people and be, you know, social and going back to kindness and being a kind and a good person to be around. So
it all works together to make the whole. Absolutely. Okay.
I would say be open-minded. You know, I'm not going to say there are no absolutes, but right, like when we start working in, I think stagnation happens when we're like, oh, it has to be done this way, or this is the best way to do it. But early in my career, I remember thinking, oh no, this is the way things should be done, or this is the way things are. And then you start to realize you're like, no, that you don't have to do it that way. You know, you kind of set a manifesto or you know, a personal beliefs of, you know, where you go, oh yeah, everything should fit this way. And then I've gotten more and more open-minded, and it's also great because you get feedback from other people, and that's part of that kindness that both David and Gregory were speaking about, is listening to other people and being receptive to their ideas. And I think that's helped me the most in my career. Just being open-minded.
That's huge. That's huge. No, great advice, guys. That's I think going to be very helpful for people. So we are getting close to the end, but before we do that, do want to hear briefly what each of you, I guess we kind of heard a little bit, but what is the next project that you are going to tackle so that we can follow along with you guys? Dustin, go ahead.
Okay. Right now I've been writing more. Like David said, he's been writing as well.
Yeah.
And so I have a nonfiction piece. It's a memoir that I have. I'm finishing up the proposal on it. I've gotten some really good feedback on that, and I'll be sending that out to publishers via an agent very soon, probably about the end of the year. So that's something I'm excited about as I finish this this season of my show. So
great. Okay, very good. David, what about you?
I have a indie feature coming out in November called Playing with Beethoven, where I got to produce and also get involved with the audio for the feature. So that'll be a lot of fun when it gets out, and we'll actually start promoting it. But it'll I believe receive a theatrical. I think I can say it'll receive a theatrical release.
Awesome.
I think I can say that. Yeah, I can say that. But it's that's the next project that's coming out, and I have a bunch of stuff in development right now. I'm looking for a Christmas film to shoot, so I'm talking with a couple different writers right now in terms of getting things into pre-production. And I have the pandemic project for me was writing my TV series, which I can say is military based, and I can't get much more specific than that, but it is a TV project, and I can say that I am talking to larger studios about getting it into development.
Awesome. Yeah. Great to hear. Very cool. Okay. And Mr. Gregory.
So sadly, because I'm embargoed, I cannot make the big international announcements, but we're just halfway through The Dig, which is I host every Wednesday evening, but we will be publishing, it's called Volume 1, The Dig, so it'll be available for the holidays. I also will be releasing, it's now a year and a half late, the first Pueblo food guide. So this started out with 428 establishments, but we don't know, there's maybe 50 to 100 that may not be coming back. So we're releasing a short, it's like a top 100 to keep it going. And then we'll do a more big edition that'll be available for the holidays. But what I'm really excited about is The Dig is going to hit the road next year. And we have several other cities that are interested in the format, but for Pueblo, we're going to go to all of the neighborhoods over 20 weeks. So we're going to be dedicating 4 to 5 consecutive Wednesdays to a different neighborhood in Pueblo. And we're going to encourage guests to come. And again, this is if we can continue to meet in person. But we will encourage people to go to patronize the restaurants, the stores, the shops, and we'll do the same type of a contemporary speakeasy. We will broadcast it live again with our 3 cameras and everything, which has worked out great because it's not only for live stream, but also then we archive it for future generations. So that I'm really, really excited about. And then I'll be back in Japan. Nice. I still do a lot of work in Japan, and sadly it's been a tough year this year, but I'll be back several times. I just got back this week, but I'll be back again next week. Some big projects that are happening there, which is great. So
great. Awesome. Well, it seems like you guys have your hands full over the next little bit. That's it's great to stay busy. That's unbelievable. That is our time. amazing what happens when you put people in a room and start talking, and time flies like that. Thank you guys so much for your insights and for your time. This is a very informative panel. I think people are going to get a lot out of it. Thank you guys so much for everything, and stay creative. Stay creative. That's the key, and you guys are. So thank you guys. Enjoy your weekend, and I'm sure I will be speaking with all of you soon.
Thanks so much, Brian.
All right, guys.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.